Cheyenne from the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. I'm doing your mini podcast for the week. And we are going to talk about timing your feeds. And timing feeds is really kind of a big thing that new moms get really concerned about, because we always think, okay, should be watching, what the baby, how long the baby is feeding for, or, when the baby is going to feed. And, the concept of feeding on demand can be hard to grasp when you're used to kind of living your life on a routine. So there's a couple things we think about when we talk about timing feeds. First of all, timing feeds meaning like how long the baby is feeding for. And it's confusing because, people will tell you, don't worry about how long the baby's on for, don't time your feeds. But then you go to a pediatrician and your pediatrician will say, how long is the baby feeding for? So it's kind of one of those mixed bags. But overall, we want the baby to do what the baby wants to do. In the very beginning, when your baby is a newborn, so we're talking about 1 day to 4 weeks, they can be pretty sleepy. Sometimes you have to really stimulate them to keep them awake and feeding, and that is really normal. So it's hard to kind of gauge how long they're feeding for. As they get bigger and as they are, kind of in charge of their own feeding patterns, then they will determine how long they want to be on for, how long they're going to feed for, and they'll just kind of come off when they're done. But babies don't tend to come off when they're done in the very, very beginning because they just kind of fall asleep. So when we're thinking about timing feeds as far as how often to feed, that is something that we really want moms to try to get into the pattern of just kind of listening to the baby and listening to your body and feeding on demand. What can happen if you time your feeds? When we say timing your feeds, we mean okay, it's been 2 hours, you're fussy, it can't possibly mean you're hungry yet because it's only been 2 hours. It absolutely might mean the baby's hungry and wants to eat. But if you're holding the baby off and not feeding them when they want to be fed, that can impact your milk supply, and it can impact how the baby feeds. So what we want you to do is just kind of listen to the baby. If the baby wants to eat, we feed the baby. If the baby's fussy and you put them on and they just go to sleep, then that means they're just kind of needing that comfort. But we don't want to miss out on that cue. And those cues are how you learn your baby too. If you're responding to them and you put them on the breast and they don't want to eat, then that's kind of, you're learning something new about your baby. When they fuss at that time in this way, they're just wanting to snuggle. When they're fussing, as soon as they wake up from a nap, maybe that is, when they want to feed. So this is how you learn what your baby's doing. But if you are trying to control when those feedings are happening, that can impact milk supply. It can cause plugged milk ducts. It can cause, problems with the baby feeding. If you are timing how long the baby is on the breast for, that can also impact your milk supply, and it can also impact getting plugged milk ducts. So we let the baby stay on, for as long as they want to stay on, as long as they're feeding. And if you have questions or concerns about what an actual feeding looks like, then you can also go back to some of our other podcast episodes where we talk about that, talk about watching the sucks and the swallows. And I believe there's also a YouTube video on that as well. And if you have any other questions or concerns, you can just kind of reach out and get a hold of me. Thank you.